Mwiriwe neza. Let me start by thanking the organizers of this event, the young people here, the professionals and others. Ladies and gentlemen, even if it has been a very long day for me, I'm still more than happy to come and be with you. Such conversations are extremely important, especially in as far as the good future we want for our country is concerned. Just there's a question that was put to the panel. First of all, from what I caught up with, I think the panel must have done a very good job. I'm sure they did even much better before I arrived. The question was, what do you stand for? And the panelists gave different answers, but they all actually added to the same thing. The one who answered last and said many things. If you move backwards, when somebody who said accountability means many things. The other one who said we means many people, but also many things. And another one who talked about I think dignity or something, or integrity. Integrity means many things. So you really say the same things, only differently. Only in different words. So, but thank you, I think, and I agree with all of those that were mentioned. Then the other point, you see, there is this thing about government versus many things, the private sector, business, civil society. First of all of these actually end up adding up to what we are. This government we talk about is not some external animal that we happen to find amongst us. It's our government. So, first of all, this government need not be a stranger to us. At the same time, the argument was also that do we put these governments in place or not? In other words, therefore, it ends up being our government. So this drawing of lines between these different institutions or entities, if you will, has to be done carefully at some times. At times may not create the right impressions. But let me go back to the actual thing that brought us here, even if that is part of it. I think the purpose of today, this evening, as people were discussing, was to say there are all these complexities we have to deal with about ourselves, about how do we develop, how do we integrate in the rest of the world without getting lost, without being absorbed just like nobodies. I think we want to find our own place in society, in the global village we find ourselves in. So depending on what we want to stand for, that will define our well-being in the near or distant future. And I think it matters that we try and look for, based on what we stand for, our responsibilities, and therefore work together to create that future we want. I think there are so many interesting arguments that came up, points raised, but Rwanda, not being an island, in terms of geography or history, Rwanda will finally be what it wants to be if we decide that we are going to be focused and do everything that is within our means and power to achieve the objectives of being who we want to be, and the process of expressing ourselves in as far as our expressions in what we stand for. I think this is a very, very interesting argument for me. It has a lot of substance to it, and I'm really glad that our future leaders sitting here start taking up the challenge as early as you are doing. Maybe you are a little late, but I think it's not yet too late. I think we should be happy that we can do something. Now, let me even build on some of the things I had the panel discussing earlier on, and continue to where I want to move to. You see, I think somebody raised a fair point. Or it was an exchange where people are trying to understand who is it to blame. Do we blame ourselves? Do we blame other people for causing us many of the problems we find we are confronting every day? And there was even a suggestion that we are, after all, we are doing fine. I think to all those arguments, I say it was yes and no. Yes, because there are these histories we know of things that have happened, and indeed happened, because of our different actions, individually by our leaders in history, or collectively by our people at different levels in different parts of our continent. So things have happened in the past that we should be proud of. And maybe things are happening or have happened in the recent past or even today that we should also celebrate and say maybe this is helping to move us forward and help our development. It's therefore partly a fair point. There's another partly fair point, therefore, to say, no, I think if we want to confront these serious challenges, and they are serious challenges, in order for our countries, for our people to be where we want to be, and in fact where we are already too late to be, I can't help but also put the blame somewhere, and somewhere meaning we are the ones to take that blame. We Africans and African leaders especially. We cannot avoid taking the blame. I want to share an open secret with you. Have you seen these meetings we go to? We hear, America invites us to have a conversation with us. Africans, you should see us. We are racing to be there. It's like, get on your marks, get set. Let's see who gets there first. Then, before we arrive back home, the Indians call and say, I want you here. And we are racing to India. When we are back home, before we settle down, the Chinese are calling. And it goes on and on. Fair enough. Something I have seen and experienced that I am hoping that you will not see or even experience is what is done there. What we do when we are there. And I will take my fair share of the blame. But when we are there, you see what is lacking in us that we need to pay attention to. Not only the leaders, but even somehow this translates even into some of the behaviors of the people we find back home when we go back home. The kind of, and I have had an opportunity not so long ago to talk about it with some of our leaders, fellow leaders. We talk about it and they also see the point. the begging and the crying, and it's like, they should help us, otherwise the next day we shall collapse. And the manner in which it is done, absolutely absent the dignity we deserve to display and build on to get to the future we want. It's really not fair. And of course, here there are two problems. One is the problem of those we are there and surrendering almost everything to. And so that's one problem, big problem enough. The other is the fact that these are people actually who enjoy it and expect it as of a matter of right they have to see these Africans. I don't know how to describe it. Yes, it's like, just literally playing around with our hair and heads and trying to say, you will be fine. Don't worry. We will take care of you. No, it's not a good thing for us. No. And yet, it's not as if we have nothing to give back. It's not as if these people are really entirely doing you a favor. Partly, maybe, but largely, if you wanted to see it differently, I think it's something that we have that they want from us as well. Talk about whatever you talk about. What doesn't Africa have? What does it not have? Start with yourselves, the people. The resources. Oh, the good weather. Everything. So why are we lacking this connection? The people, the resources, everything good, including the weather. What is it that causes this lack of connection? Connection where, in many ways, connecting these things together, but even we connecting with that we have and making very good sense of to get what we want, but also to build on that for our priceless possession that we should have, our dignity. What is it? If you young people, you may tell me and what you think about it. Even when there have been all these kinds of discussions, whether here or anywhere else in our continent, we talk about leaders. We talk about leaders who should come and go. This business of transferring power. I think it's a fair point But I think it is also discussed in a manner that belittles everything that is important in that process. And I just mention one. You see, when we have listened carefully and heard all things said, in many cases, we are talking about transfer of power, which is a process that happens in one form or another, at one time or another. But I hope, but that's not what I see, or if where I see it, maybe it is in one place out of 10, is the discussion of saying, but of course that just doesn't happen. We have to create an environment for that. We have to create a good understanding for that. It is to say, how can we have somebody or some people lead us with some level of decency that represents us, or that we can build on or with to get better, to move further in the direction where we want to take our country. Many times it is not about that quality that we are looking for. It's just about another replacement. It's just about being tired. You say, well, this guy has been there too long. I think we are just tired of this one. Let's have another one. Fine. But I'm only saying, let's think so seriously about this other added thing. Let's not think about just one thing, whatever the merits or lack of them for this, but let's add, there is one aspect, one important thing, I think that is not disputed. It's that representative that is going to be there of our interests, of a certain level that is required. There must be some minimum. We must look at that. We must be conscious of that. That we are going to put in place leaders that really represent the kind of integrity that was talked about, accountability that was talked about, the we meaning we with certain values and rights that we have high expectations for. Our expectations should be high. We can't hold ourselves to very low expectation, as actually some of these people you are talking about. You know, these outsiders really have very low expectation about us. Is it a secret? You don't know that? Oh, yes. It's like when things are going wrong everywhere, it's like, well, what did you expect? These are some Africans, you know, when we were having a genocide here, really, that was expected. Yes. These Africans, what else do you expect of them? And in fact, when you saw the kind of response there was to it, to that kind of situation, it was not unrelated to that kind of attitude. It's like, you mean you're talking about these poor Africans in Rwanda killing each other? It's like, is it unheard of? Is it unexpected? Yeah, this is the usual savagery, of these people. So it's like, why are you rushing to, hey, to stop these fellows from, sizing up each other and doing justice to one another in this form? It's not an exaggeration. What I'm telling you, what I'm saying is not an exaggeration. You may decide to believe it or not, that's a different issue. I don't know how many situations like ours you need, like that one we experienced here, to be convinced. Now, but more importantly, if we believe and understand that, I think more importantly, maybe we shouldn't be creating these situations also and expecting that somebody will come to our rescue. Isn't it? The best thing is even never to go in that direction. Otherwise, we are actually playing in the hands of these same people who say, well, what else do you expect from them? So the best thing in the direction of what we should stand for is to make sure we don't go there. Isn't it? Yes. We shouldn't go there, in that direction where we start doing that to ourselves and then expecting that somebody will come to help us out of it. So we cannot talk about leaders, we cannot talk about good politics, we cannot talk about holding ourselves in the mirror and then saying, what do we stand for? Or how do we relate to others, unless we are able to take responsibility for ourselves. We need to take responsibility. So what I'm saying is, when I was talking about having leaders that we should put there and meeting certain levels of standard, I'm saying we need to exercise responsibility for ourselves. There's no escaping it. That responsibility, in fact, leaders we are talking about are about responsibility. How responsible are we for ourselves, for our people, So all these other things that were being talked about, I think, are details that we find in that exercise of responsibility by leaders or by all of us, individuals, and better still, and inevitably, collectively. You may ask one question here, another there, one thing there, but in the end, they all add up to something. They add up to how much we're able to take responsibility for ourselves. They add up to what we do in everyday life, thinking about that individual responsibility as well as the collective responsibility and gain from it. There's no doubt about it. So, and you know, I'm telling you this, for me, I'm sharing these views with you. So take it or leave it. But when you have lived a life, it's not like you have been reading books about how to live a life. That is also useful. I'm not disputing that. But you should not waste either reading how people live lives, or even you should not waste the lessons you learn from living a life. You should not. So it comes, I think I should maybe try and bring it to a conclusion, coming to another complex situation we face every day. First of all, why is there this issue of us almost versus them? You know, it's like Africa, we know we are like this, we are being told to do this, and so on and so forth. I think one can raise the question in a different way. You know, everything I've heard of and read and things like that suggested to me that actually we Africans more or less humanity starts from around us here. Even those who moved away from here and have come to gain this superiority, and everything they tell us, everything we see them doing and all kinds of things are the ones to be emulated, actually originated with us from here. I'm sure you know that, of course, I'm better than me. But then what happened? Do you mean the farther away they were going, the more superior they were becoming? How about us claiming the fact that being the origin, I think we have the secret with us of how things. But joke aside, maybe one can ask that question even differently. What is it because here I was listening the notions and definitions of democracy and all kinds of things, freedoms, and is it really something that is unknown? Are these things unknown to us? Are these things that we have discovered we need to import from somewhere else and bring them to our countries? So what is it? It goes back to not only what do we stand for, yes, but who are we? Okay, what are our weaknesses? We can talk about our weaknesses. But don't we really have some strengths too on which we can build to address whatever weaknesses we have? Haven't we even been open enough to interact, to discuss, to exchange with others to the point that we are stronger, we are better, and can take better responsibility for ourselves as we work with others as well? Because I don't suggest that we should be Rwandans or Rwandese or Africans and the others can go wherever. But I'm saying that we need to work together, to live together, to share. But ultimately, there is who we are, and there must be that we stand for. And standing for something good should not be like it's a favor that has been done to us by somebody else. I don't accept it. I don't agree. And I think you young and upcoming leaders, the earlier you indeed discuss that, debate that, and understand it, the better. But it becomes even unfair or simplistic in another sense, and we should also be held responsible for that, because we have also discovered, even while in a discussion we are saying, recently I was, when we were at the UN, in fact, I remember having a long discussion with my delegation after that, and we were making analysis. There were big powers and people, the speeches were about, leaders, governments must listen to, must work for their people. They must, and then later on aside, when we were discussing individually with some of these leaders, I actually asked them, I said, by the way, when you are saying we must listen to, we must work for, we must really, represent our people, I said, which people are you talking about? Because the reason I was asking that question, I said, what people did you have in mind? In the end, in the discussion, it turns out it's like And when they say the choices of people must be respected, it's what they tell us. But when some people have made a choice somewhere, they say, no, 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 that's not good. That's why I was saying, which people are you talking about? So in other words, they are telling everybody there that you must listen to your people in as far as they represent us, in as far as they represent our choices and interests, or in as far as we have told those people what choices to make. So here, on one hand, we seem to understand each other that democracy is about choices of people. It's about the freedom of people to make those choices. That's the standard. But then, actually, somebody else did not mean that. He meant that, no, but the people must be making choices in line with our values and beliefs, not theirs. And in fact, this is where, in most cases, we have had a disagreement. For example, our own country, that's why you have had many arguments with people. So, but this is something that will go on and on and on, but you can't be outside of this discussion. You people, you young people, the leaders of our country tomorrow and in the near future, you can't be outside of that conversation. But people can also decide to take the easier route, the safer one, the safer route, or the convenient route, which in a way appear like this, but it's actually very expensive. Well, when you agree with everything they say and you represent their interests, of course it is easier because you will get easy visas, you will get a lot of praise. They say, oh, you know, this guy is a very smart guy, you know. Did you see how he, you know, did you see how he abused the president? But in their place, the one who abuses their president is not a smart guy. Absolutely. They really, in a moment, you'll be off the floor. And so these are things they feed the people on, and they start feeding people on actually hating themselves or hating what is theirs. It's like, if this is what you are used to do in your own place, this is an illiterate thing. It's not. This is a backward thing. This is a primitive thing. This is a thing of dictators. This is a thing of, you know, sometimes I can try to be cynical as well. Let me tell you something. You are seeing this thing across the world. You know, terrorism has really become terrorism. You know, across the world. Initially, we thought it was something for poor countries, but it seems it is also reaching the rich world. But what I want to say is, by the way, if it had not spread as it has, and also sometimes caused by the same people it is affecting, by sometimes bad policies and all kinds of things, and also by thinking that what is good for you may not be or is not good for others. You know, this situation where it's like, if it is good for me, but not for you. So for you, unless I give it to you, it's not good for you. But the point I'm making is, if it hadn't been, if it wasn't on a level field, that this is not, if it wasn't going even to rich places, already we would have been feeding on being told, you know, terrorism is a result of dictatorships of these poor countries. Oh, yes. This is something that would be in the books now, written, you know, these experts. They would be feeding us with saying, you know, terrorism is a result of bad governance. It's a result of dictatorships. But because it has been knocking on everybody's door, now it must be something we share that comes from somewhere. We must deal with it together. This is exactly. But if you look at the whole of the whole of North Africa, by the way, and then go to the Middle East, you know, which one came first? Was it Libya or Egypt? I don't even remember. Egypt? You remember the promise to Egypt was democracy was coming. It has been too long. And it really came. Oh, yes. And it was like, you know, with speeches made, and, you know, it's like, you see what you have been missing? We are bringing this thing to you now. Okay. They put it in the containers and shipped it, and when they opened the containers, what was in the containers was not democracy. It is what you saw, right? In Libya, I don't know what it is. Yes, but the same thing. Let me tell you, I hope you are not too tired. I want to take your time. You see, Gaddafi was a horrible man. In fact, for me, when I heard that some people inside of Libya were, you know, rising up against him, I actually thought it was a good thing. I even supported, if there are Libyans who want to remove this man, and I was doing it for a reason. Maybe you didn't know about this. When actually when it started happening, we discovered that Gaddafi had been shipping arms into Rwanda. We found their embassy here was full of all kinds of weaponry. They had been bringing I think in diplomacy they have things they call diplomatic bags. But it is just, actually it is not a bag. They can bring a container and they call it a bag. But they were shipping arms. We have them with us because our police had to raid the embassy and found these things, explosives, Then when I was, we were attending the AU summit at one point, I was telling my friend and brother late Meles, the father of his daughter we have here with us. I was telling him the story. I said, do you know what this man has been doing? We didn't realize. He says, oh, I think there is double that amount here in Addis. We discovered they had also been doing that in Addis. And I think one or two other places. But anyway, he passed away before we were able to ask him what this whole thing was about. But so on that basis, we knew what he was doing and so he said, well, if his own people can do that, fair enough. But literally, did we realize the whole thing was coming from outside rather than from inside? And even from outside, the people who were doing it without a plan of how to manage what comes after. And that's why there is this chaos we are having. And nobody knows where it's going to end up. Whether Libya will ever be another country or it is going to break up into 1,000 pieces, nobody knows. But the same people who have all these lessons for us and things we should be emulating, and they were 75% behind the engineering of what we see or what we saw that happened in Libya and what, therefore, the consequences of it now. And now everybody has disappeared back where they came from, and it's like, oh, these Libyans, you know, they are on their own. It's like they did this to themselves. So it happens in Libya, then it is in Egypt, then we see even in Tunisia, even, you know, all across. But of course, now, the question comes back, and I ask, if you know, you can tell me, which place in this world where democracy was shipped to a country and we can say, you see, this is one example. Tell me one example. Mwenda says Libya. Yeah, that's a good example. So we can't do things without, you know, if we want to shape our future and define properly what we stand for, and we are thinking about our people, ourselves, and we can't do anything without having this at the back of our minds. We have to think about it. Then that will inform our very actions as they follow one another. So let's hope, therefore, that these discussions that you are having, this event, is one of many you may continue to have that will raise most of these issues without fear, without favor, and also draw lessons from that will inform our actions for a better future for our country. And let's keep going, and let's see what we can do for ourselves. Thank you for your invitation and for the enlightened discussion that I saw earlier on, and I hope we can stay the course. Asante sana.